I burped. Do not put that in there. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Amber Rose, also known as the Religious Hippie. You can basically follow me on any social media platform, or you can go straight to my website where I have economy rosaries, mugs, and other items for donation. The shipping prices are included in the prices already. We had to kind of redo the shop a little bit. Just wanted to let you guys know that shipping is included in the price there, in case anybody freaks out about the price. Or you could just simply donate. I do appreciate every single donation I get. It helps me to keep this ministry running. Truly, I could not do this without you. I am just a tool in God's hands trying to do what he wants me to do. So any donation is greatly appreciated. Or if you can't donate, please like and subscribe. That will help us tremendously. Thank you so much, guys. All right. Now to get into the beef of this video. The
What?
Anyways, so today we're going to be doing a Q&A because I have not done one of these in quite a while and you guys always have awesome questions to ask me. So we're going to be answering some of those today. So we're just gonna hop right into it.
Okay, first question. When was your, oh wow, that was really God moment?
Well, I would have to say that it was when I met Max, actually. Because of the fact I was getting out of a pretty bad relationship and I didn't really know what God wanted me to do. I knew that he was not calling me to this situationship anymore, basically, and I had to figure out what to do about that. And I decided that the best thing would be to break it off. And that was one of the hardest times in my life because I had grown very fond and attached to this person over quite a few years. We had a lot of history and I felt like I was hurting them and the situation was just very difficult emotionally. But I knew that God would see me through and I knew the fruit of it was very good when after I broke off the relationship. I felt this sense of peace and this sense of relief. And you know it's from the Holy Spirit when you feel peace about a situation. And I knew that even though it was hard in that moment, there were better things to come. And you know, God then led me into an amazing relationship with my now fiance, and it's just been amazing ever since. And looking back, you can really see divine providence. You know, Max moving to Chicago, we both go to the same parish, we met there. He's a convert. You've been converted for like a year and a couple months now? Mm-hmm. So it's just like everything worked out in God's timing and I could not be happier right now. It's just very interesting to see how it all happens, but definitely God's providence, and that was that was God moment. I have a lot of them, but I think that's the most prominent one where it's like, wow, it's crazy to look back on it and see how he truly worked.
Who was your confirmation saint?
My confirmation saint is Saint Rose of Lima. I don't remember why I picked her because I was like 10 or 11 when I did, but I'm still cultivating a relationship with her. It's been something that I've struggled with and I'm not exactly sure why. Originally, I really wanted St. Francis of Assisi as my confirmation saint. I do remember that, but a lot of people will say, oh, you can't have a male confirmation saint if you're a female, vice versa. Like, that's not true at all. But that's what I always believed. However, I do love St. Rose of Lima, and I'm slowly trying to cultivate that relationship with her. It's just taken a little bit more time than some other saints that I've been closer to, like Saint Francis, Saint Joseph, and Saint Therese of Lisieux. So
yoga, yay or nay?
So I actually did an entire 2-part episode, podcast episode on yoga with Brian from Catholic's Truth, or A Catholic's Truth, The Catholic's Truth, something like that. You guys would recognize him if you saw him. And we actually did a whole video about this, about how like yoga and the moves themselves are not the religion, it's the wording and the sayings that are, because the movement, like all of those movements were movements that gymnasts used many years ago. So a lot of the movements that are in yoga were actually founded in gymnastics and other sports. They didn't start putting exercise in yoga until, I believe he said like the 1980s, I want to say. But we did like a whole podcast episode, two-parter. Hey there, partner. We did a 2-part podcast episode. The first episode is about yoga, the history of it, why it's not what people think it is, and all of the history and, you know, resources, information you need to back that up. And then Christian yoga. And obviously, it's not compatible with Christianity at all, the actual religion of yoga. So if you are interested in learning more about that, you guys can check out my podcast. It's called A Catholic's Perspective, and you just have to look for the one about yoga. It's really easy to find. Season 3 just wrapped up, and we're gearing up for season 4, but you guys can find it anywhere you listen to your podcasts: iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, etc.
Your thoughts on Catholic dating apps?
I have mixed feelings about Catholic dating apps. I know tons of people who have found their significant other on a Catholic dating app, and then I know other people who have horror stories about people they've met on Catholic dating apps. I have had friends who have had personal stories about this where like they've met guys. One guy was like, he did not have any thoughts behind his eyes. Like he was just there and he was not present for anything. Another guy did some weird things on the first date, like pee behind a house. And so maybe just use your discernment. Personally, I feel like the best and most authentic relationships are built in person. That doesn't mean they have to start in person, but they can't stay online, if you know what I mean. So if you meet somebody online, try to get it offline as soon as possible. You don't want to keep that relationship online. But also be very, very careful, ladies. Please tell somebody where you're going. Don't have them pick you up from your house. Make sure you meet in a public area, maybe mass first. I'm not a huge fan of dating apps in general because of the fact that you truly don't know who you're meeting up with. And that's something that has always kind of scared me, but I acknowledge that people have met their significant others through Catholic dating apps, and I'm totally on board with that. That's awesome. But please do your due diligence and be careful.
Your opinion on The Chosen?
Well, for starters, it's really cringy. Secondly, it's very unbiblical, and Protestants always blame Catholics, saying that what we believe is not in the Bible, but they watch The Chosen, and many of them take it as this is the story of Jesus. Oh yeah, this is what happened. Some of them are smart enough and realize it's not, a lot of it is fiction. But honestly, it's very cheesy to me. It seems very superficial and very Protestant. I do appreciate that they're trying to make the gospel more digestible to people today, but this show itself is just not good. Also, the whole gay flag thing, what the heck is going on with that?
Where were all the places you talked last year?
So in 2022, I gave quite a few talks. I gave one in Yorkville. I gave one in Wisconsin. I've done one in Iowa, Ohio, Delaware, Colorado. I feel like I did another one somewhere, but it's slipping my mind. There's another place in Illinois, but I did quite a few talks last year, which was very wonderful, and I'm very grateful for that. Some of the subjects of the talks that I gave were, the first one I ever did was on my own reversion, my own story, which was very healing for me to be able to share it with a bunch of young high schoolers who were getting confirmed. The one I did in Colorado, that one was specifically about how traditionalism is important in today's society and how our generation is really gravitating towards it and wanting more TLMs, traditional Latin masses, and they really want to start veiling and having big families. And we see this increase in people wanting these traditional values. And so I talked about the importance of that and how to cultivate that as a young adult. And then the one I did in Delaware, that was about social media and how it impacts us as Catholics, how we can use it for good, how it's not inherently evil, but we also do have to be careful about the way we use it. And overall, I'm grateful for all the opportunities I had to speak last year and the opportunities this year that are up to come. So thank you guys.
How to hear God's voice in my everyday life?
The first thing we have to do is we have to cancel out the noise of our everyday life. Because I do believe that with such a noisy world we live in, there's radios going, there's billboards everywhere, there's a TV going, there's a podcast in the background, music playing, there's so much going on that we really need to find the time to spend with God. We really need to set aside time and get used to hearing His voice in our lives. And the only way we can do that is if we cut out the noise. Because He will speak into our hearts, and you will truly know when it's God because you'll have this sense of peace about it. I will say that it is very hard to cultivate time in, silence and prayer, especially if you're a mother or a sibling who has a lot of kids or a lot of siblings. And the best thing I can say is just ask God for the grace to hear his voice in your life. Did I say that right? To hear his voice. Did I say that okay? That sounds okay? Okay. But God speaks more in whispers than he does anything else. It's very subtle. And so what we have to do is we have to come out of ourselves and live our life and have God open those doorways for us to step through and have him close other doorways. And honestly, just being open to his will is one of those ways we'll really be able to hear his voice in our life.
How to deal with hate as a Catholic?
I don't know, somebody tell me, please. I'm just kidding, I'm the one giving advice here. Haters will be prayed for. So I can only tell you guys how I've dealt with hate in the past and how I deal with it now. So how I used to deal with hate in the past is when somebody would attack me, and this was mainly online, keep in mind. Most of my family's Catholic, so I never actually had to deal with it in person as much. I was dating a Protestant for a while where at times I would run into a little bit of hate here or there, but it was never really bad. However, when what I used to do before, especially on TikTok, because TikTok is just an awful place, and I did a whole video about why you should delete TikTok, I would usually scroll through my comments and I would ignore the people who were like supporting me and being like, oh, this is awesome, and I'd go straight to the hate comments. And I would just be like, well, you're wrong. It's like, and I would just send them like, oh, that's a great excuse, or like, we don't worship Mary. And like, I would just spend hours and hours responding, and it would really disturb my peace. And I felt exhausted at the end of the day, depressed. I didn't know why I was feeling that way, but I realized there was a connection between the hate I was receiving and my horrible mood, like my horrible attitude and energy. And so I decided to stop responding to them and instead just not even look at the comments. That's how I used to deal with it. How I deal with it now is I view somebody giving me hate. Let's say somebody said something that attacks me or my faith, whatever it might be. I view that person as needing, like, someone who needs prayers. I see it as God putting that person in my view to pray for. I view it as somebody who needs prayers, who is hurting themselves, maybe has some wounds with the church or doesn't completely understand the gravity of their words. And so to me, it's a cry for help. And that's what I view it as. And I pray for them. If it's really vulgar, I'll usually delete the comment just because we don't, tolerate that type of negativity in this area. But I will say that most of the time what I do now is I do pray for the haters, because it can be very difficult. Don't get me wrong. This isn't something that happens overnight. It took me 3 years. Seriously, but you definitely need to practice it, because we're never going to win hearts. And that's the whole point, I'd rather win a heart than an argument. So sometimes that means keeping the doorway open. And if people have questions about things, just tell them like, hey, if they're being disrespectful, hey, you can't talk to me this way. Like, I really appreciate you wanting to know more about the faith, but if we can't talk about this like adults, and just have a normal conversation, then it's not worth my time. Just remember not to throw your pearls to swine and to protect your own peace.
Why do we beat our chest during the Hail Holy Queen prayer?
So actually, I was wondering this too, because I've done this because I've just been following what other people have done throughout the years. And I was just like, this doesn't really make sense. So I was talking to my fiance, and we were just kind of like, yeah, this really doesn't make sense. So we looked it up. Turns out you're not supposed to do it, because beating your chest is like a sign of contrition. And I want to clarify that it's like not bad to do. It's not a sin to do, obviously. But it still doesn't make sense to do it, since beating your chest is seen as a sign of contrition. And when we do it during the O Clement, O Loving, O Sweet Virgin Mary, like, it just doesn't really make any sense. So just wanted to clarify that for anybody who might be wondering.
Dr. Taylor Marshall is running for president. Thoughts?
I do really like Taylor Marshall. Some of the stuff he does put out is very controversial, but he's also a sweetie. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm kind of worried for him and his family if he is actually serious about it, because we've seen what can happen in those situations. And so keep him in your prayers, but I'm not against him running. I'm definitely not. I just really do pray for him and his family that they don't get doxxed and all of that stuff.
What does your morning routine look like?
Usually my morning routine consists of me getting up between the hours of 7 and 8-ish, 8:30 sometimes, depending on what time of year it is. Because in the winter I wake up later because it's darker out longer. And then usually I will do my morning offering while I brush my teeth. And then usually I go downstairs and get some tea or some, water. And then I come back upstairs and then I'll do the rest of my prayers, some spiritual reading. I'll look at the calendar that I have to see what I have planned for today. And then usually I will, shower, get dressed, whatever I need to do. And that's usually my morning routine. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I feel like more goes into the nighttime routine, because you have to prepare yourself for the morning routine. So then my morning routine is very simplistic.
How to grow closer to God as a couple. Okay.
First and foremost, the thing you guys should be focusing on the most is going to Mass together. Now, if it's a long distance relationship, obviously that would be more difficult, but that should be a number one priority when you see each other in person or when you are not, long distance. The second thing I would highly suggest is getting on a routine together to go to confession together. Obviously, you go separately, but get in line together, support each other in that. If you've noticed your significant other hasn't been to confession in a while, invite them to go with you. Don't be like,
oh, wow, it's been a really long time since you've gone to confession.
Don't do that. They probably won't appreciate that. But if you're like, oh, honey, I haven't gone to confession in a while, would you like to come with me? That opens the doorway and they'll be like, oh, you know what? I haven't gone to confession in a while. You see? You see? All right. The third thing is finding a time to pray together, whether that's in the morning or the afternoon or the night. If you live long distance, you can FaceTime or you guys can phone call and you guys can do the rosary together, Divine Mercy Chaplet, or just say some nighttime prayers together. But really setting aside time like you would for yourself, every day individually, you should set aside time for your significant other and you to pray. So that's what I gotta say. Also, one more thing is to volunteer together, because I think that's very, very helpful to do acts of service together.
Why are Catholics less on fire than other Christian denominations?
I don't think that's necessarily true. I do think that we see a lot of non-denominational churches, which is still a denomination, by the way, evangelical churches and these mega churches throwing these huge parties and things like that. That's all based off of feelings. That's not really being on fire for the faith. That is basing the faith off of a feeling you get, which is, emotional manipulation. And whereas with the faith, the truth faith, the one true faith that Jesus Christ started, Catholicism, we have a lot of people on fire, and you'd have to be really blind not to see it. Not saying you're blind, but I'm just saying, there are so many people out there who are on fire for the faith. And if you've gone to NCYC, which is National Catholic Youth Conference, or Seek, or any of the Focus events, you would see thousands upon thousands of Catholics coming together to pray the rosary, to attend Mass, to come together and really live out the gospel and the true faith. Now, I understand where you are coming from, because I did used to go to a lot of Novus Ordo parishes where nobody seemed to be on fire for the faith. Nobody really seemed to want to be there. It seems like they were there for only just to keep up an image. I'm not saying that's true, but I'm just saying that's what it seemed like. And if that's what you're seeing, that's unfortunate, because it does not do the Catholic faith justice. So I just want to give you encouragement that there are tons and tons of Catholics out there who are on fire for their faith, but they might just not be online. Genuinely, I've met so many Catholics who don't even have social media who are on so on fire for their faith, and they meet people in person and you can truly tell that they are on fire for their faith because of the way that they're living out their life. And I think that's important to remember too. And with all of that being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Feel free to send in more questions and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.